contribute to overall well-being for our communities. Guys, we're going to be continuing Chapter 5 today. If you have not yet submitted the Chapter 4 exercise, it is now overdue. I'm hoping to start grading those within the next day or so. It's been one of those weeks where things are a little behind schedule. Despite the fact we got some material to cover today, I always like to bring in some current events. And this is a current event that just was current as of this morning. We're talking about drones. We're talking about automation. A company in Europe has just issued one of the largest commercial payload drones that's ever been made. I'm going to show you this video. Any thoughts? When we're talking about automation as a new trend, Richard, why is this important? Oh, for sure. I mean, could this have an impact on the way people work? What are your thoughts? How could it, Sarah? How could this have an effect?
I was just thinking about Amazon and them delivering, and if you get them down to maybe one-day shipping, and it could possibly cut out truck drivers.
I'm thinking the same thing, because did you guys catch the payload, 200 kilograms? That breaks down, how many pounds does that break down to? It's roughly 400, isn't it? Yeah, so we're talking about something that literally could deliver televisions, could deliver microwave ovens, could deliver hard big-ticket items. Yes?
What would you give a distance for how long you can carry that?
40 kilometers. So that's, I mean, if you think about the idea, for example, although Amazon's not there yet, is there a company in the United States that has a distribution network that's almost that tight? Yeah, for sure. So if you get into a group like Walmart, for example, even if it comes down to, even if it's not business to consumer, if we're running out of a certain item, for example, at a particular Walmart that's close to a distribution center, instead of putting 2 or 3 things on a truck, we're not talking about a drone that could deliver custom deliveries on this stuff. The agriculture part of it I thought was pretty interesting too, because a lot of that work is done by human beings who are driving vehicles at this point. Now we're going to be talking about automated drones being able to do it. The sheer size of this thing is pretty amazing too. And the other part of it, let's think about this. Who here in a major city in the United States has ever sat in a traffic jam? Yeah, it's horrible. And so these things are not occupying the same space as cars, but they're also not occupying the same space as commercial aircraft. So we're talking about relatively untethered, relatively open airspace. This could be a big game changer for the way we transport goods and services. I think there are also people, for example, who work for companies. Actually, let me ask you. What companies should the rank and file be concerned? And which companies should the rank and file be concerned about their jobs? Who could be affected by this? What kind of companies? You got it, man. If I'm a union UPS driver or a FedEx driver, or if I'm working for the United States Postal Service, I might be thinking to myself, well, yeah, drones used to be just for small deliveries. This is next level kind of stuff. It's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. I know we're not talking specifically about tech today, but this stuff does affect the way we live in our world. Guys, we left off talking about absenteeism in the last class. And guys, there's lots of reasons why people miss work. Sometimes people need a mental health day. Sometimes people are really sick. Don't you hate it, though, when you sit in class and the person next to you is oozing all kinds of bodily fluids and you still felt the need to come to class? That's the most terrible thing in the world. But yet we do it all the time. Why do so many people come to work sick? What do you guys think? We talked about this a class or two ago. Why do people come to work sick? Yes. Ironically, they don't want to use vacation or sick time, so they come to work sick. Why else do people come to work sick? I feel the same way. If I were on my deathbed, I wouldn't want to miss this class because the content here is invaluable. I'd be like dragging myself in here like a zombie, making my way over here to one of these chairs. Is there another reason why people don't want to miss work? How many required paid days off do American workers get? 0. So there are a lot of people who cannot call off work. How do you feel about that? If the person making your food at Chipotle really doesn't want to be there and is carrying the next epidemic virus, but is coming to work because they don't get paid days off. Does that make you feel good? Me either. So I think when we start thinking about paid days off, it's not just an issue of whether or not it's fair. It's also at times a public health issue, I think. But there are 2 types. There's involuntary and there's voluntary. Involuntary, I'm sick. I got the flu, I was in an accident, I cannot come to work. Voluntary means I scheduled time off, I took a mental health day, I chose not to come to work. There's two different types. Well, according to Forbes, this is what we're losing in terms of productivity, in terms of absenteeism. They're predicting that we lose about $84 billion a year. And that breaks down, the 36 versus the 26 comes down to whether or not somebody's a salary employee or an hourly, but the salary is still broken down to an hourly level. So per hour, based on those designations, that's what we're losing in terms of productivity from people not coming to work. And if you look about specific professions, check it out. If you're a professional kind of realm, if you're a nurse, or sorry, if you're not a nurse, a physician or a teacher, if you're just white collar, that's costing about $24.2 billion a year we're missing just because people aren't coming to work over absenteeism. These are some actual excuses that people use. HR Magazine solicits what are the most unusual excuses that people use for not coming to work. I love this one. My monkey died. Or let's see. I had to ship my grandmother's bones to India. I was spit on by a venomous snake. I totaled my wife's Jeep in a collision with a cow. I love this. I would love to use this, call it a Dr. Fry, and tell him I was arrested as a result of mistaken identity. People have actually used these before as excuses. So, I don't know. The dog ate my homework wasn't up there, but these are really pretty good. So what causes absenteeism? What are some of the sources we have? Or the direct costs, I should say. Direct costs mean if I don't show up for work and they hire a substitute, they have to hire somebody to come and take my place. What's it costing? And indirect costs are things that are not so easy to calculate. So if we believe a lot of people are going to be calling off, we might staff up ahead of time. We're entering a part of the year in Pennsylvania where a lot of people seem to miss work on a Monday. What am I talking about for Pennsylvanians? What am I talking about? It's deer season, which is a holiday in this part of the world, in case you hadn't realized. I say, I look at your face, but it's true. My high school used to give the first day of deer season off. And here's the best part about deer season, in my estimation. There is no better holiday in the world, the one that celebrates everybody and their brother drinking for 48 hours solid before they get a firearm and go into the woods. That's like the best holiday ever. What could possibly go wrong? You watch the news, the first day of deer season, several people will die over very stupid reasons. The best one I can remember, this wasn't deer season, but was hunting season. A guy accidentally shot his wife claiming he thought she was a squirrel. I think there might be more to this story. So, but I digress. If we decide that we're going to hire a bunch of extra people to be around on the Monday after Thanksgiving, because we think everybody will be out deer hunting, that would be an indirect cost because we had to have other people in. Other indirect costs are if somebody doesn't show up, what kind of lost productivity do we have? Let's say, for example, we have McDonald's because we have a nice fast food place there, and on what they used to call it, Deer Widows Monday, because in the old days women didn't hunt as much. A lot of women hunt these days. Let's say instead of having these 5 people working at McDonald's, we only have 3 people working at McDonald's that day. How is that costing McDonald's money? How might that cost McDonald's money? Yes?
They're getting less orders now, so
So we're slower and people are getting frustrated. Some people are saying, screw this, and they're walking away. How else is that costing us money, potentially? We got to close out at the end of the day. We have 3 people instead of 5. They're going to take us longer? So what might these 3 people be entitled to? Overtime. You got it. And so anything we're doing that's costing us money that was not directly associated with that person not being there that day would be an indirect cost. And also having to retrain somebody to work for the day also takes up time. Customer dissatisfaction and overtime factor into that as well. And we also are probably operating at a slower pace. I cannot speak today. Probably all the sugar I've been eating today. So, guys, we have disciplinary approaches, for example, that we can use and when we're trying to enforce attendance policies. You have a couple ways you can approach this. A disciplinary approach is if you are taking too much time off, maybe you lose a little bit of pay incentive. Maybe you get reprimanded. Maybe you get demerits on your record, for example. We could also take the alternate approach, which is if you got perfect attendance, we'll give you a reward at the end of the year. Or we could take a combination of the two. What do you guys think about awards for perfect attendance? Is that a good or a bad thing? Yes?
I think it's a good thing because it
It definitely does. It definitely does. Has anybody here in this room ever won an award for perfect attendance? What was it? Was it school? How many days did you go without missing? A full year. That's impressive. Wow. Did you win one as well? And was it for a year? That's impressive. I don't think I ever made it a whole school year without missing time. Yes.
Kid I graduated with an award when he graduated and he never missed a single day of school since kindergarten.
Wow. So that is so did you envy or feel sorry for him?
I definitely didn't want to be him.
Yeah, I don't think I want to beat him either. I think I remember the first time I actually actively cut class in high school. It was because a bunch of my friends and I cut school to go to a KISS concert. That was like the best thing ever. We cut class so we could go to the War Memorial and get in line to get good seats to see KISS. And you know what? It was totally worth it. It's totally worth it. Sometimes you got to blow some things off. That's why I don't get too bent out of shape if people are not missing too much class. But what works the best? It depends on your environment. For example, I think generally speaking in white-collar environments, for example, if you're a teacher, you know when you got to be here. You got to be here to teach your classes, for example. If we're taking a punitive approach or a positive reinforcement approach, the positive reinforcement approach is probably better. If you're working in a place where attendance is very important, if it's fast food and somebody not showing up, for example, derails the shift, then maybe you do need to have some sort of a disciplinary approach. We also have what we refer to as a no-fault policy, which means so long as the work gets done, you can take off whenever you want. You guys remember I mentioned a company that tried that earlier this semester. Who was it? It wasn't Google. Oh, Uber. I'm sorry, I misheard you. It wasn't Uber either. It was a company that we all use a lot on rainy days. When you have nothing else to do. You might want to watch something. Netflix. You guys remember how that worked out for Netflix? How'd it work out? What was the problem with the policy? You guys remember? Yes.
People were scared. They thought it was like a trend.
Yeah, it was. Nobody took it seriously. Well, they did take it seriously. They didn't believe that it was an actual policy. So I don't have to come in and work at all, so long as my work gets done. That sounds good. Or are they trying to get rid of somebody? They're trying to watch somebody. It's kind of like one of those weird comments you get from your significant other. Has anybody ever heard this comment from your significant other? Has anybody, attention up front, folks, has anybody ever got this comment from their significant other? You ask them a question, and the response goes something like this. That's fine. What does that mean? It's never fine. And when somebody says that, you got to get behind the meaning. This is the equivalent of the employee saying, "Oh, you don't want to show up today." That's fine. That's fine. That's okay. That'll work. So they had to clarify it. And just, by the way, what's the other word you never want to hear from your significant other? Something wrong? What's wrong? Nothing. It's never nothing. It's never nothing. Guys, this is something that employers are moving to right now. Right now we have sick time, and we have vacation time, never the twain shall meet. A lot of companies are saying, why don't we just go to a combined program and call it paid time off? Instead of designating sick time versus vacation time, why don't we have paid time off? What do you guys think of that? Because what do you guys think of this approach? As opposed to giving people sick days or vacation days. What do you think? Why might this be a superior approach? What do you think? Has anybody here ever taken a sick day when they weren't really sick? We can be honest. I'll be honest too. So sometimes we need a day off. Wouldn't it be awesome if you didn't have to lie about it? If you're giving people the same amount of time off anyway, why don't we just be honest and call it a PTO day? Instead of me calling in and saying, Dr. Fry, I'm really sick, even though it's the day after the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and I want to go out to the hunting camp with all my buddies. I'm not sick. I just want a PTO day. It allows people to be honest. I love this idea, and I think it makes more sense. Guys, before we continue, we've been going for a good solid half hour, so it is time for our first opportunity for questions for the day. What would you like to ask? Would anybody like another cookie too? Yes.
If you were a student, would you vote for me for SGA president?
Wow, that's it. Well, because a few people are running, so give me your compelling argument. Why should I vote for you?
My experience in SGA was chosen as a fellow my freshman year, one of 3. I'm very passionate about it. I believe that I can bring out the best in like e-board collaboration wise as well as like Senate, because sometimes there's not like that bridge between them. And then also with Senate and students as well to bring more ideas to federal campus.
Here's what I'll say, Becky. Your character is not in question with me, but to be an informed voter, I would have to hear similar statements from your competitors so I can fairly evaluate. So, is that a fair retort?
Sure.
Yeah, I would love. By the way, you're welcome to campaign, and you had your podium. I hope you guys got a chance to hear this pitch, and you're voting for SGA president. So, self plugs are encouraged in this class. Who else would like to make a question? Yes. I already did, man. I dressed up as a slice of bacon this morning. I did for my 9 a.m. Business 101. I got no love for it at all, man. Because you guys, I felt so heartbroken after that. I just didn't think I had it in me anymore. I was even making puns and everything. I was like, you guys are baking me crazy and stuff like that. And I got nothing. I got nothing from these guys. I was like, I walked in the room and I'm like, wow, something smells good in here. And I want to bring in a George Foreman grill and actually have some bacon cooking. Yes.
What was your favorite Halloween costume?
Like ever?
Yeah.
Ever. Wow. I got to think on that one for a minute. That's so predictable, though, isn't it? Actually, a couple of years ago, my wife and I went out and did a couple's costume, and she was Poison Ivy, and I was the Joker. And so I was the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker, in the nurse outfit, and it brought the house down. It was pretty good. Yes.
Does the teacher have the right to give homework to a homeless kid?
That's just so mean. That's just so mean. Wow. I can't believe you just said that. So what would I call it? Car work or street work? What would I call it? That's horrible. You put me in a position where I'm saying mean things. Wow. Oh my goodness. On that note, we got to get back to work. That was too much. There's a line and you crossed it, man. That's so mean. In terms of measures, I can't believe you said that. That's so mean.
I read it.
All right. In terms of measuring absenteeism, what a lot of people will try to do is measure their absenteeism rate, and you do that basically by taking and dividing the number of last days you have by the number of productive hours that the average person works. You come up with a rate. What would you guys estimate? What industries do we probably see higher rates of absenteeism? What do you think? Any thoughts? Where are people more likely to say, I'm tired of this job? Yes. Dealing with the public is no fun. Has anybody here ever had a job where they got to deal with the public? Yeah, people suck sometimes, do they not? Food service people tend to call off. Hourly employees tend to call off. People in high-stress jobs tend to call off. And in fact, guys, has anybody ever heard the term going postal? Have you ever heard the term? Do you know where it comes from? There were a number of guys in the post office in the 80s and 90s who were in these performance management situations where they got so stressed out they couldn't possibly meet the goals they were set to meet, and they came into work with guns and started killing people. And that's where the term going postal came from, because it came from actual postal shootings. Going postal, it just means that if somebody says you're going postal, it means you're committing a violent act out of stress. So, yeah, and so in terms of how we measure absenteeism, you can also go with incidence rate per 100. I'm not really concerned that you guys know this stuff. What I'm concerned that you know about is that a no-fault policy means you can take off time whenever you want. A PTO policy means there's no sick time and vacation time. An incentive policy means you're rewarding people for perfect attendance. A punitive policy means you're dinging them if they don't show up for work. That's the important stuff here. Guys, when we start talking about turnover, okay, we got a lot of turnover in this organization. Does that word from the way it comes out of my mouth, does it have a positive or negative connotation? Negative. Is turnover a bad thing? What do you think? Yes. Yeah, turnover can be a bad thing if you're losing your good people. If they're all walking out the door, turnover can be a good thing if the bad folks are going out and the good folks are coming in. I think turnover is healthy, man. Like, let's say, for example, everybody you had as a teacher have been teaching for 40 years. Is that a good thing? Yeah, it's good if you want to learn on an abacus and learn how to, do geometry that hasn't changed in 2,000 years. Or if you want to learn from 1960s business law, that's a great idea. Otherwise, it's just not current. So turnover is a good thing, and it's healthy for an organization. So some of the things that we see, we get a lot of turnover, for example, if people are losing interest in getting promoted. They don't see a path forward. They can't get a raise. They can't get a promotion. If you also have people who are not wanting to get into long-term programs, so they're saying, I'm not interested in training, all these things. If I'm sitting in meetings and not saying a damn thing, it means I could be at risk for turnover because I'm checking out. I want out of the organization. I think didn't I share with you guys in my last class about the worst boss I ever had? I think I told you that story about the meetings. He was on the edge of a mutiny. At that time, if the economy had been better, more people would have been leaving. Now, we have a couple types of turnover. We have involuntary turnover, which means you get fired because you don't know what you're doing. This guy or this girl's out of here because they're incompetent or they're lazy or they're not doing the job. Voluntary turnover means I'm leaving. I am out the door because I want to go someplace else. And then we have what we call functional turnover, and that means you might have to take somebody out of your system because they're disruptive, or it could also mean, for example, functional turnover means we hired too many people for the holidays, and we got to let somebody go for that reason. So when it comes down to involuntary, functional turnover technically is also involuntary turnover as well. The two main types are involuntary and voluntary. If we see a lot of voluntary turnover in organizations, is that a good or a bad sign for the economy? What do you think? If we see overall in our nation that more people are leaving jobs by choice, is that good or bad for the economy? What would you say? I would think it's good. Why is it good? What does it show? Yeah. And the belief that you're going to be able to get another job. So we also call this, by the way, frictional turnover. Think about this. We have friction between people. People aren't getting along. There's friction. And if you don't like where you work, you can leave and get another job. It's a great sign for the economy. Now then we get into dysfunctional turnover. That means we got somebody who we really needed to stay, and they left. And then we have uncontrollable turnover, which means somebody might leave for a reason they can't control. My spouse got a job in another city. I got to leave. Controllable turnover means the employer can do something to keep somebody. For example, we have an employer who's doing well financially, and somebody leaves because they want a better job, a better pay somewhere else. That's controllable turnover if you can afford a raise for that person and you would benefit from keeping them. That's controllable. Dysfunctional turnover, plenty of organizations let good people go and pay the price for it. Now we also have something called churn, and that means that we're hiring new people while we're laying off other people. The word churn, it sounds like everything is in disarray, like you're churning butter or things are churning around. But in reality, it can be a good thing as well. We're seeing more churn these days because organizations are more agile. They're technology focused. We got to switch people more often than we used to. So at times we are laying off people or getting rid of people involuntarily while we're still hiring new people. So that's a big chunk of content we just went through there as well. So I'm going to pause for one question this time or a sales pitch. We have a good sales pitch for a candidate. So if there are any other SGA candidates in here for a position, feel free to state your position. Otherwise, I would like a question or comment, please. We've been going fast today, guys. What would you like to ask? Yes, sir.
If you could switch your voice to another person's voice, who would it be?
Morgan Freeman. I mean, I love this statement. When Michael Uslan came to campus, he said basically, if Morgan Freeman's narrating your life, you know it was worth something. Like, I could just picture, that was the day that Professor Tompkins came in and talked about the computing rate. You know, like that would be awesome to have. Wouldn't that be awesome to think about that? That was the day that Tonkin realized carbohydrates and processed sugar were added to his bottom line. Like that would be amazing, wouldn't it? If you could talk like anybody, who would it be?
Probably John Mayer.
Good.
Would also be the same with
If you inherit his guitar playing too, you got the trifecta. I should go home tonight and just talk to my wife like Morgan Freeman the whole time. Like, you know, and like I'm narrating. That's when Ken Tonka walked in and realized his wife was making roast beef for dinner. You know, it's like that. Wouldn't that be amazing? I should do that the whole night today. And I'll come in next week. Hey, Professor Tonkin, how you doing? Oh, I just got served divorce papers. My day is not working out. That's the day Tonkin realized sometimes there's too much of a good thing. You know, so anyway, guys, it's that kind of day. It's all the sugar today. In terms of your turnover rate, it's very similar to calculating absenteeism. So you take the total number of separations and divide it by the total number of employees you have at mid-year, take that times 100, and you get your turnover rate. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this other than to say it's a good measure to say what kind of turnover rate are we getting. If we get to a certain point where we're losing people all the time, how can that hurt a company? Some turnover is good. If we have too much turnover, what can happen? What might happen? Yes. Were you raising your hand? I'm sorry.
Are they leaving voluntarily?
Well, some are voluntarily, some are involuntarily. But either way, it's affecting our company. How people leaving, people turning over, new people coming in, old people leaving. How could that negatively affect our company? Yes.
You're constantly training somebody else to do the job.
You got it. And it takes forever to train somebody. Think about this, guys. Put your mind in this position. When you first came to St. Francis, you realized you had to do things like get forms and operate on our intranet system, our MyFrancis. From the time you walked into the door to the time you knew where all your important stuff was, what was that time period? How long did it take you to find everything? Yeah, at least. Number one, because our MyFrancis is not very well laid out, but there's things you just have to know about this place. Are there things on this campus, for example, that if you weren't a regular here, you'd never find or know how to do? Absolutely. It's like that in any organization. No matter how well we want to document and how accessible we want to make our organization, it's sometimes really hard to get that stuff down. So when somebody walks out the door, you're not just losing their skills, you're losing their organizational knowledge, and you're going to have to break somebody else in to be able to do it. We also, by the way, though, when we are looking at this information, let's say, for example, our turnover rate wasn't too bad. Let's say we had a 15% turnover rate, but about 10% of that was all women. So out of 15% of people we're losing in the company, 10% of the 15%, 10% total, are females. Do we have a problem? We might have a bigger problem than we realize. We might have a culture of something like sexual harassment that maybe we're not completely aware of. So that's statistical information. John Miko would be proud that I made that reference. That could absolutely come into the equation. Then we have some other turnover costs as well. We've got separation costs, and that could mean you might be paying somebody a severance pay. If you're a good company, you're fired, but we're going to give you 2 months' salary. Vacancy means what's it costing to not have somebody doing that position. For example, if I go home tonight and start talking like Morgan Freeman all night, and my wife decides to hit me over the head with a frying pan, and they have to have somebody else come in and teach this class, and they have to pay them overloads, that would be an example of a vacancy cost because they got to pay somebody else temporarily to do the job. Then the replacement cost. What's it going to cost to recruit somebody, get them in the spot? What are we going to pay to train somebody? And then we also have what we refer to as hidden or indirect costs. And did it take a couple weeks for the new person to get up to speed? So the question is, what does it cost to hire somebody? There's a lot of hidden costs in hiring. On average, if somebody, and this is if you took all open positions in the United States, from the lowest paid fast food worker to the highest paid CEO, the average is to recruit and hire a new person costs you over $4,000. The average vacancy rate, the time it takes to find the right person for a new job, by the time you advertise it, interview them, get them in a position, you got 42 days. Can we lose a lot of productivity in that period of time? Hell yeah, in the modern environment. Can you imagine? And in the 4,129, it's going to be way higher in some instances, particularly if you got somebody who is out and you can't offer your product or service to them. So we start talking about optimal turnover. What we mean by that is that if we're getting more folks coming in than leaving that are good for our company, then we're in a good place. If we're losing poor performers and we're gaining good performers, and we're keeping the folks who are the knowledge base of our organization, everybody wins. And it's also okay too if there's good replacements. Companies are very concerned about turnover. Employees not so much in this environment. Employees, it's a 3% unemployment market. If somebody leaves, they can get another job. They can choose to go somewhere else. This is why employers are freaking the blank out right now, because they can't get enough people. I'm going to give you an example. Some of you know where I was yesterday. Does anybody know what I was doing yesterday? I was in jail. I was in FCI Loretto yesterday. We were doing workforce development training for people who are incarcerated. And we were doing that because there's a group called Menasha, and it's a company that makes packaged goods. They're actively recruiting people who are incarcerated to come into the workforce. And you may say to yourself, why are they doing that? Any idea why they would be so interested in incarcerated persons? Yes? Well, that's true. But they're also running out of anybody else to hire. So populations that would normally have not been attractive to companies, i.e. people who have been incarcerated. And by the way, just so I clarify my own personal views on that, I believe in second chances for people. I think that nobody benefits by keeping people locked up for decades, with exceptions. I mean, I'm not saying all crimes are equal. I'm saying that if we have a choice of keeping somebody locked in a cage for the rest of their life versus putting them back to work, there are many circumstances where it makes more sense to do that. Yes, ma'am? There are tax breaks as well. And I think the bigger benefit, I don't want to sound too idealistic about this, but the bigger benefit to me is you're doing some good for society. I mean, let's think about it. We, in the United States, have the largest percentage of our own population incarcerated than any other country in the world. And it used to be, if you were one political party, you were against incarceration. If you were pro-incarceration, you were the other political party. Both political parties are basically saying we have a lot of people in jail who probably shouldn't be in jail. So that being said, I'm not saying there aren't people who should be, but there are a lot of people who are ready to come back into society. So my point by all of that is right now, it is definitely a reason why employers are trying to keep people employed. So, questions, guys? We're going to go about another 5 minutes. So at the last 5 minutes of class, I can meet with our crew for next week. But we're going to continue a little bit. We talked about the negative effects of turnover. We talked about some of the positive effects. I was talking about an economic standpoint. Guys, there's an old expression I've seen that says we're always happy to see people around here. We're happy to see some come in. We're happy to see some leave. And I think people have the same expression. The other part of that is come back when you can't stay so long. Love that one too. But it comes into the idea basically that we do benefit sometimes from people leaving. There are times when I've worked with people and I couldn't have been happier to see them go. They were not people I enjoyed working with. So that's a positive aspect. And sometimes when you lose people, you actually boost productivity. Let me give you an example. If we had a scenario where we had this much work to do and this many people versus this much work to do and this many people, how can having fewer people actually increase morale? Any thoughts? Yeah. You have a chance to build a tighter relationship. And here's the trick too. Has anybody ever found it when they have less to do, they actually find themselves sitting around and doing even less? It's Einstein, I think, said objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest. What that means is when you don't have enough to do, it can actually make you even less productive. So making sure people are constantly busy and using their skills sometimes can be a boost to their self-esteem as well. It's a good thing. So turnover can help people get new talent. They can keep people from getting too complacent. And it can give us new ideas. I think anytime we have a new hire into this organization, we generally bring some skill in. Now the flip side is, why do people leave? Now this is according to Forbes. What do you not see on that list? What's something noticeably absent from Forbes' list? Yeah, Forbes basically said in their research that your best performers, generally speaking, you hope you're financially rewarding your best performer. That's a no-brainer. If you've got good performers in your organization, pay them well. But the reason that people are leaving companies are things like enjoying their work, not feeling like what they do matters, not having fun in your job. Well, let me ask you guys too, and this will be my last question for the day, and we'll wrap it up there. How many of you are, by show of hands, hoping that your job after college, whatever job or jobs you landed, how many of you are hoping for a fun job? So what does fun mean to you guys? Like if you had to say, this would be something I would enjoy about my job when I get out, what would be something that would create satisfaction for you in that regard? What do you think will be fun about your job? Yes?
Maybe something that is gonna, like, you're not gonna face a routine every day. Something that is not gonna be the same, like every day is something new that you go.
So something's not monotonous, something keeps you on your toes. Yeah, great point. What else are you guys hoping makes your jobs fun? Yes?
Working with people that I like.
Oh, yeah, that makes all the difference too, by the way. Life's too short to be around people you don't enjoy being around. Emily, what's something you hope you enjoy about your job?
I was going to say, like, not only what you're doing, but, like, who you're doing with. Like,
I couldn't agree more. Does anybody else have something they hope makes their job fun? Yes? What kind of culture are you hoping you work within? Like, what would be your ideal company culture? Something informal, you actually get to know people. Somebody on this side of the room, tell me one thing they hope makes their job fun when they get out. Yes?
Find a sense of purpose. You feel like what you're doing is meaningful.
I swear to God, this is absolutely true. Every day when I walk through the back entrance of Schwab Hall, I look up at the sign that says Schwab Hall. It still says on the entrance. And I check in with myself every day before I come in this building. Am I serving the people in my classroom well? Am I going to do a good job for these folks? Am I going to meet their expectations? And I feel a sense of purpose every time I walk through these halls. And if I leave at the end of the day and I can't look at that sign and feel I did a good job, I'll try twice as hard the next day. So having a sense of purpose and liking the people you're with. I've had more laughs with this crew of people that I get to work with every day. It never feels like work. I feel like it's a success. So guys, that's a good place for us to end our conversation on a high note today. So if Emily, Sarah, and Juan can hang out for a minute, we're going to talk about next week. Thank you, guys.